So we're
Already.
we're on 13b1, 13b1 at the Mishnah. So we're a half a omid behind the daf. Today's daf being daf 14. So here we go. Let's do some. It's not difficult stuff.
You gimel on the base.
Again, you gimel omid base the Mishnah. You gimel omid base the Mishnah 13b1. Says the Mishnah.
Okay.
You're allowed to cover figs that have been worked on, that have been cut, with straw to protect them from the rain. What kind of coverage? The basic, just throw a little bit on it to protect it. I tell you, not only could you could really pile it up. Okay, again, we're dealing with Chala Moed. Vendors of selling retail of fruit, clothing, and utensils can sell it for the needs of the yontif, but privately. In other words, don't show that you're out, you got a full-blown thing going. Hatzayodin, trappers, Badashoyis, grain pounders, Bakaronais, and bean grinders, Oisim Bitsinal Tzarech could also work on this stuff, also privately for the festival. These guys, the vendors and the trappers and everybody else, were very stringent upon themselves. What does that mean they were stringent? That they were particular to be in private? Or does it mean that they didn't do any work at all? Okay? That is up in the air. We'll talk about it. Gemara is going to talk about it. What just needs to be pointed out is how things change. In a world that was agriculturally based, these things were the main jobs. It is amazing today how much of the world today, especially in the Western world, are not used to these jobs because they're not agriculturally based. We don't think about how does the food get to the table, except of course for Jerry Abramson. But everybody else thinks that it's just automatic. You go to the store and there's the food. It's interesting to note that how much the Mishnah was involved in that. Kligi bo Reb Chia bar Abba v'Rabasi v'Tavayi mishmei dechizkir v'Rab Yochanan. Chadam and the chafen akalushe. You're allowed to cover it up very sparsely, just enough to protect it from the rain. Ma'achvin asmuchi, and the phrase you should make it thick refers to covering it up closely, meaning, in other words, piling it up tight together. The chadam and mechafin we may cover means bein al kushe bein asmuche, sparsely or thickly. So therefore, what does ma'avin mean? Ma'avin is oisa oisa kamin kuri. In other words, as opposed to leaving it piled up like this, you bring it together, you pile it up into the piles, which of course means you more or less complete its work. If you think about it, more or less complete its work, and you're covering it up. Tani nami hachi ma'avin oisa kamin kuri divrei Rabbi Yehuda. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Fine. Moichet payis kasus v'kelim u'moichet tzina, right? And then Rabbi Yossi said the words, "Hey machmir and alatzman." They took on a stringency for themselves. So what is that stringency? Inquired. Inquiring minds want to know. Hey nachmiru alatzman v'layavdei klal. Does it mean they took a stringency upon themselves and didn't work at all on Chalamoid? By the way, to the detriment of the community, because the community needed this stuff. In truth, of course, they were not supposed to take on this stringency. They worked privately, which of course is the proper way to do it. Says the Gemara Tashma, they should work, they could sell their stuff in private for the needs of the festival. Rabbi Yossi Aimer, Tagore Tiberia, the merchants of Tiberias, took a chumrah onto themselves, a stringency onto themselves. They didn't sell anything on the Chalamoid. Sadi Chayus Moipis V'Dogim Sodim B'Tzina L'Tzarech HaMoed. Obviously says trappers, etc. are allowed to sell their wares in private on the yontif because it's needed for the yontif. Rabbi Yossi Aimed, Sade Akoy, the trappers of Akre, hey, Kamiru Alatz Mishlayut, Southern Kalika, they didn't trap at all. Tishushe Chikla Betargis Vitisone, Tedusha Bitsina Lutzarche Amoy. Thank you so much. Those who pounded the wheat into Chikla Targis and Tisoy. We'll get into this in a minute. Pounded it in private for the needs of the yontif. Rabbi Yossi Aimed, Rabbi Yossi says, the great elders in Sipari were more Catholics than the Pope, and they didn't do it even on Chalamoid. Obviously, to the detriment of the people. So you see that Rabbi Yossi was to refrain from work at all. 13b3. Amar Abaya, so said Abaya, what is chikla? Right? We just said these words before without translating them. Chikla, targis, and tisane. So what are they? Chikla chodelatarte means splitting the kernels into two. Targis chodotlos. Targis is splitting it into three. Tisane chadelabo, cutting it into fours. However, they're all made out of wheat. Cutting it up into small means that you soak them in water, okay? And when you soak them in water, you softened it up. And then you're able to slice it. Why am I making a big deal? Because food stuff is not susceptible to contamination, is not susceptible to be mekabel tumah unless it's prepared. How is it prepared? By being wetted. You remember this, we had this before. You need to wet the thing. You have to wet the fruit. You have to wet the thing. When it's wetted in one of the 7 different kinds of liquid, it allowed it. The reason why I'm mentioning it is because obviously that's coming up in about 30 seconds. Okay? So, Ki Otzer Abdimi Oma, in fact, Chilka is kunto spelt. Spelt is not wetted. It's hard. Okay? Not wetted. If you want to see this below, it's number 21 in the numbers in the article below. So now the Gemara is going to ask on all this that we just said. Rabdimi therefore says kunta is spelt and is not prepared. Spelt is not soaked in water and therefore is not prepared to become tummy. It's not. It hasn't reached to that level. So on this break, the Gemara Masnisa, we have a kasha from the Mishnah. The Mishnah says like this: Chilka targis v'tisonei mitame v'chol makom. Amatama everywhere, both in cities and villages, because everybody, in order to make them, must soak in water, and water makes it hechshel mekabel tuma, prepared to be able to become tameh. Means it reaches the level of a food stuff. It now is a double chashav, it's food. That you cut it into 2, 3s, and 4s. This kashur, because it's machshir, it became susceptible to be mekabel tuma because it was soaked in water and liquids. Elalamadi amakunta is spelled Rabdimi. It should not become tamakan because if it's not made for split kernels, it doesn't require soaking. It therefore was not watered and it's not royal mekabel tuma. Everybody understand? I mean, we've had these kind of gemaras before, and we will have them again. What we don't realize is that this whole tumah and tahara, which today sounds archaic, it's arcane because we are all tumah, because we've all come in contact with corpses. So we don't think about it twice. But in a world where that was a big deal, in a world where the Beis Hamikdash of people who only ate chulin with tahara, only ate regular food in tahara, in other words, just like over here, you have bagels that are kosher, and that he makes sure is from Yashon, the old grains, not the new grains, not him specifically. You don't have to. In Chutz La'aretz, you don't have to, but those who are in Eretz Yisrael have to make sure that it's old grains and new grains. In Chutz La'aretz, you don't have to worry about where the grains came from. Right, Jerry? Isn't that correct? Right. So, what do you call? But there's one other thing. If this was at the time of Mashiach, it would have to be said, made as chulin tahar. You should know that all my food is tar. Everybody in the back is working with plastic gloves because plastic does not make double trouble. Okay. So, anyways, so I had Rabbi Reisman said that everybody should invest in plastics because when the Mashiach comes, everybody's going to be wearing plastic gloves because when you shake people's hands, you don't know if the other guy's coming or not. So this way, but now that we don't shake hands anymore, it's not a problem. Okay. Anyway, so back at the thing. So what do you see? The chilka, because it's not susceptible to tumah, was never soaked. What it called is therefore clearly chilka cannot be spelled because spelled is never soaked. And over here they say that of course it's makabel tumah, right? We said over here that chilka is makabel tumah. Says Gemara, keep going to miklapa. No. We're talking about spelt that has to be whole. It has its outside husk. Because if you didn't soak it in water, the shell would not come off. The membrane around it would not come off. Okay. Why is it called chilka? Because when the hull is removed, it becomes smooth. Smooth in Hebrew is cholak. Okay, the Hebrew word for smooth is cholak. Meisvei, they're asking on Rabdini again. Hanoida min adogon. A dogon in this case is not a fish. It's the chamishe mine dogon, the 5 types of grain, of which there's big arguments whether rice is a grain, etc. Anyway, somebody goes ahead, Reuven goes ahead and vows not to have any benefit from the 5 types of grain. Also, after Kol HaMitzri Yovesh, even the dry Egyptian beans are classified as Dagon. Okay? They're classified as Dagon. Okay? So, and obviously there's an argument that those, what he called, okay, we're followed, our Baraisa follows the opinion of Rameir that these are, what he called, that these are already considered under the category of Dagon, of one of the 5 grains. However, if it's fresh beans and not hard beans, it's mutter because they're not piled up yet. They're still in their unprocessed state. Mutter ba'oires with rice, the chilka, the targis, and the tinsa. Sorry, are grits that are come from wheat that are split 2, 3, and 4. To not forget is doggone by the splitting taken out of the classification of the of a grain. It doesn't look like a grain anymore. It looks like a farina, right? It's a cereal. It's not included in the vow. That it's spelled Dogamal Yahu spelled as a real thing. Says the Gemara Kashi, you got a good question. Now, a good question means I have an answer. So you can always talk about I put the spelt into a grinder, into a thing, and grind it out again. But again, you have to force the answer. 13b4 says the Gemara Rav Huna Shari Leila Yentkui Kiruf Yosa Lemez Alamun Lazapune Diarchui Bishuka. Rav Huna allowed the spice merchants to go and sell in the marketplace in Chalamoid in the usual way in public. Rav Kahana, why? In the case of a shop that opens onto a bench area. So imagine a nice little town. We have benches on the outside, and behind the benches is storefronts that you open up the window, right? That open up onto the benches. Okay? You're allowed to open the doors or close them in the usual way. Since these shops are sort of secluded, they're behind the benches facing the public. But in case of a shop that doesn't have benches in front of it, it opens directly into the public thoroughfare. Leave one door open and one door shut. In other words, that's some sort of privacy, and that's your difference. That's your shinoi. That's your difference. The Erev Yom Tov Achon, but on the eve of the final day of Yom Tov, meaning on Hoshana Rabbah, before Shmini Atzeres, Moitzi Umamter as Shuke Eir Bepeis B'Shvil Kvod Yontav Ha'achad. He brings out his wares and puts it right out, opens up a table in the marketplace to sell the fruit in honor of the of Shmini Atzeres so that there should be food on the people's tables. It says the Gemara, by going out of your way to use the word because of the honor of Yontif, Vivnei Kovid Yontif Ha'achron in, Vivnei Kovid Yontif Lai, but not in honor of the final day of Yontif. What do we see them in? We see that selling on Chanaloi normally cannot be sold publicly. Why did he allow to sell them to spice merchants on Chanaloi? Like Kasha, Habepere. This is with regard to fruit. Since people buy fruit in large quantities, it will look like the storekeeper is selling for non-yontif purposes. You know, you go to Winn-Dixie, you buy your fruits and vegetables on Thursday, and it lasts you a whole week, right? So therefore, you're not buying it just for the yontif, you're buying it for after. So there we ask you to go private. The tablet. Over here, we're dealing with spices. Spices, you buy, remember, we think about spices, you get McCormick, and you put it in your drawer. Here, the spices came in little bags. They came in little bags. You bought it by the spoonful. So you only bought the spices that you needed. Talking about the spices you needed. That's what they did. How did Allah Misha? How did Allah Misha? How did Misha? We should return to you, Misha. We should return to you, Misha, and we should return to you, Misha. So now, the next paragraph is the last chapter in our Masechta. It goes all the way to literally daf 29. It is, in many ways, the chapter of Avelis, of mourning. So let's take 2 minutes to discuss this. To be an oinein, which is biblical in nature, is when one of the 7 relatives pass away, father, mother, sister, brother, whatever, and all the other ones over there, is laying in front of you, meaning it's from now until the evening. Then we have the Shiva, the 7. From the 7, we have the Shloishim, the 30. You cannot shave or take a haircut during the first 30 days of the thing. Everything outside of an oinei, let me repeat this, underline, we hold, not universal, we hold that everything after the oinei, that means lying the body, having died today until the first evening, that is the only part that's rabbinical. After that, it is all rabbinical.
What's going on?
Okay, David, we're back. We're back.
What
Okay,
happened?
the internet went out. Okay, so here we go. Well, these are the people that are allowed to take a haircut on Chalamoy. Hababedina Sayim unavoidably. If he could have made it before and he couldn't take a haircut before, he's allowed to take a haircut on Chalamoy. When we base on Sivyo, someone is released from captivity. Who comes out of prison, even if he was put into prison by other fellow Jews. Okay? Of course, that's questionable what I said because us Jews have no prison system. You either pay money, you get malchus, or you get killed. There's no prison system. So, but nonetheless, was somebody that was excommunicated, that the Chazal, the sages came and relieved from the ban. Somebody who petitioned the sage, in other words, he went ahead and he made a neder, a promise, or whatever, that he was not going to take a haircut. And now he comes to the sage and tells him, please release me from the vow. V'hanozir, that's somebody who says, I will not partake in wine, right? Nazir, one of the things is he doesn't take a haircut, right? And the 30 days fall out on Chalamoy, he's allowed to take a haircut. Or who ascended from his contamination to his purity. Sorry. And these who are allowed to go to the laundry on Chalamoy. Somebody comes from overseas. The base Hashivya from captivity. Leaves prison. Okay, leaves prison. We're now on today's stop. Yud-Dalet Amud Aleph 14A1. Today's stop 14A1. For somebody who again made a vow not to do the laundry, and now there is a release from his vow. Somebody who petitions a stage and is released from his vow. I'm talking about Shemanuda, somebody who was excommunicated and begs the Chazal to believe him. In other words, there was a grievance, and then he goes to the grievance and falls on the sword. Hand towels. Barber clothes. Laundry. Hazovim and Zavos, men and women who see either woman sees a stain, very good, and a woman who gives given birth. And the truth is, anyone who's come from a state of ritual impurity to a state of purity. So the question then is, why did you have to mention Hazovim since they're part of the same thing? The Elu Hey Mutarin, they're all permitted to wash the clothes on Chalamoy. The Shah Kala Adam Isun, all other people are not allowed to. The Gemara will point out that if somebody only has one set of clothing, it's allowed to. Says the Gemara, the Shah Kala Adam, my Tama Yisurin. By the way, why aren't we, the rest of us, allowed to take a haircut and wash our clothing on Chalamoy? It's not because we learn. Anshe Mishma, the people of the Mishma, the Kahanim, the 24 groups of Kahanim that serve twice in the base of Midrash, Ba'anshe Maimin, and the corresponding Jews that was split into to represent the Jews throughout the year, the 24 Anshe Maimin, Asur L'Saper L'Chabes. During their week of Avodah, they were not allowed to take haircuts and laundry their clothes. But on the Thursday before Shabbos, Mutar they covered as Shabbos because it covered Shabbos. What's the reason why they have to go into the week? From Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they were not allowed to take a haircut or what lodge. My Tama. Because they shouldn't go in unkempt. In other words, look good when you come in to start the Avodah. In other words, when you dress to impress. Okay? That's what you got to do. that people shouldn't forget to take haircuts and wash their clothes and go through the first days of Yontif all on them, and then decide on Chalamoy that they're going to clean themselves up. Doesn't work that way. If somebody lost an object, Erev Yontif, and he was going crazy, running around looking for it, and so didn't have time to cut his hair before the onset of the Yontif 1482. Chiv on the Onos. Do we say, since he was unavoidably prevented, because we take it for granted that somebody who lost something, right, is going to be all messed up in his mind and is not going to concentrate mutter, it's allowed to, I Dilma, since nobody else will know that he lost an object and was running around. So therefore, for everybody else, it looks terrible. Why? No, he's not allowed to cut his hair. Amar Abaya, Yoimru kola sarikin isurin sariki baisus mitarin. Everybody knows when you have a matzah, you know there are dots on the matzah. So there came a time when they were drawing in pictures on the matzahs. In other words, like the pictures of the Aseres, the Esamakis. The problem was, the Chazal said the problem with that was, by doing that, you made the matzahs chametz, because you made ridges into them. It took longer to bake up because you wanted it to rise a little bit. They didn't allow it. Well, along came Baisus, and he did a genius thing. He created a stamp. He carved out a stamp, and he went like this. Bang! Just like that. Which made it very simple to get this beautiful artistic matzahs on 1, 2, 3 without chametz. So they still didn't allow baitusis because they said, if we allow baitusis, which is okay, we don't have to worry about chametz, you know what's going to happen? The rest of the world is going to go ahead and start doing it their way, right? So in other words, what it says, Yaimer Kala Sarikin is certain. Everybody else's Sarikin is not allowed. Sariki Baisis, we're going to allow Baisis to do it. Same thing over here. Even though he lost something, he was an illness, he was unavoidable. And by the letter of the law, we should allow him to take a haircut, since nobody else will know that he lost something, and they will think you're still allowed to take a haircut. Other people will come to take haircuts on Chalamoid. Says the Gemara, that in private matters that are concerning onlookers. How do you explain? One person only has one tunic. He's allowed to launder it on Chalamoid. Saying the same thing. Everybody else is Sarikin, making people think it's no good. Bisis is good, which we don't allow it. So how do we allow this guy? Nobody else knows that he has one tunic. So says Gemara, his belt testifies to him that he only has one tunic because he's washing his clothes. So he takes his bathrobe and he wears his bathrobe. Underneath, he doesn't have any clothes because that's all he has. He's walking around in his gotchkins. So what does he do? He takes his belt and ties the belt on the outside to make sure the tunic never opens up. Right? Everybody looks at it and says, oh, the poor guy. He's got no clothes underneath. The emperor has no clothes. So therefore, it must be that he only has one set of clothes. So everybody who knows, in other words, his very actions and the way he's walking around testify to him that he unfortunately has no other clothes. This sounds very strange, except just back up 100 years. We are living at the end we're in the information age, which is really just another part of the whole industrial revolution. Back up to the beginning of the industrial revolution, how many clothes do people have? A shoemaker, today nobody makes shoes. The shoemaker, we still call him a shoemaker. Because in the old days, a shoemaker was a vital person in the community. How many shoes did a person have? One or two shoes. How many clothes did a person have? He had one weekday one, and hopefully one Shabbos one. And it didn't always work. They used to turn the shirts inside out on Shabbos. So you could imagine, this is not what Daddy, after the war, right after the war, where how many clothes did a person have?
One.
One, right? And you washed it constantly because they
Right.
didn't have the manufacturing in place yet.
We
So
even
this
had we even had patches in our pants.
patches, and the truth of the matter is, today a kid rips his pants. What do? You're darning the socks, like Jerry said. I remember in the 1970s, right? When I was playing, you tried to get me these pants that were thick. And every Shabbos I'd fall and I'd rip the pants. And what did you do? Patch on a patch on the pants. And you roll up the legs. Even now, when the hem starts ripping. Oh, they don't, my kids don't understand. You know,
No, today is different. It's fashionable to have torn pants.
right, torn pants,
It
but
costs
not,
more money.
but no patches. No
No
patches.
patches. Right.
Right. It's fashionable to be torn, but no patches.
The
So,
more
socks. So I'm saying,
the more it's torn, the more it costs.
yeah, the more torn, the more it costs. I like that, Daddy. You're right. So that tells us. So I just want to show the Gemara here, while it sounded strange to for us people, it should not be strange whatsoever. That's it. So Rabbi Ashi Masni, Boya Rab Zera, Uman Sha'ov Deloy Aveda Erev Harego, an artisan, okay, a guy who makes things, who lost an object on the Erev Yontif Mahu. Even the Uman, who, since he's an artisan, Muchav Milsa, it's evident to all that he lost the thing. Because he's a very famous guy. People go to him for gifts before Yontif. It's not evident to everyone that these are the exceptions. Law, you're not permitted to cut his hair. Says the Gemara, Tishbi, it's Kushbi advice. Eliyahu Tishbi, Elijah from Tishbi, when he shows up, will tell us what to do. In the meantime, we have to be strict because we don't know what to do. That's it. We're now on 1483.
You might have to wait.
What?
There'll be so many kashas to ask him. This one will be in the back burner.
All he's going to do is say, mutta, 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 mutta.
Right.
There you go. Loud. Medina Sayyam, somebody who came from overseas. So, in other words, somebody flew in from Miami going to Eretz Yisrael for Sukkot. And the plane gets diverted, there's Corona and all this, and he gets there with 3 hours before things, and he didn't have time to take a haircut. So, Masnisin the like Rabbi Yehuda. Titania, Rabbi Yehuda, Habamedina Sayyam, Lo Yigalech. Somebody who comes from overseas should not cut his hair. He departed not under anybody's authority. Who told him to leave? Give yourself enough time. Doesn't work that way. Give yourself enough time, right? If he left home in order to roam around the world on vacation, it was 80 days around the world, and then he returned during Chalamoid, also Limazines, if he went for his livelihood, you're allowed to. If he went to increase his profits, that's even more. Going for profit is like going on a vacation, not allowed to take a haircut. Another one says that no, don't be a problem. It's normal start of business. That's why you're in business in the first place, right? It's like you could take a haircut. They ask on this. I'm a Rebbe. Rebbe says, the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that you're not allowed to cut your hair on Chalamoid is where he went on his own volition. The words of Chachamim that you're allowed to is where he went under the opinion, the authority of others. What are we talking about? What does it mean without permission? To mean he went on vacation. Everybody holds it's not to take a haircut. He went for business. Everybody says it's good. Talking about profit, not for the line is bugs. Now we got there. Yehuda's opinion is the correct one. That what you're not allowed to take a haircut. If that's true, Ema Seifa, look at the last part of the Brisa. The opinion of the sages, where he went out with permission. My bereshus, Elam Elamazainis, in order to work, to live. Everybody else, it's good. Elo l'Ravche, you want to say it's for profit. But the first part of the guy said it's good for Rabbi Yehuda that you're not allowed to, right? So therefore, what is the Chachamim saying, right? So what's going on? So what are the Chachamim? So 1484, Hachikama. Nirin Dibir Rabbi Yehuda l'Rabbanon. The opinion of Rabbi Yehuda appears correct to the Rabbanon when he embarks without permission. What is that? Lashut, for vacation. Because the Chachamim only argued Rabbi Yehuda with regard to profit. Rabbi Yehuda says you can't take a haircut. The Chachamim say you're allowed to, it's part of business. Avo Lashut, to pleasure. The Chachamim agree that he cannot cut his hair upon return. The words and the Rabbanan are correct to Rabbi Yehuda when it goes out with permission. Is for livelihood. Because he only argues with regard to making a profit. He agrees that they can take it. Shmuel, I'll give you a different explanation. Kattan and a child that's born on Yom Tif is on Chalamoid, is what it calls is a lot of cut is here on Chalamoid. That means the child is born with a lot of hair. He's born with a lot of hair, and it's bothering him. The kid is crying. Okay, so you figure you cut his hair short, right, so that the hair doesn't bother the child, the newborn. Why? Listen to the next words. Because there's no prison greater than coming out of the womb of your mother. So, so that means that the child is born a chalamayid, you're allowed to cut his hair. Mashma from that, me karalai, that if he was born prior to chalamayid, you're not allowed to cut his hair, because his hair could have been cut before Yom Tif. On Yom Tif, of course not, but it could have been cut before Yom Tif.
That's why. That's why.
Yeah, sure.
Not necessarily about this, but is our grandson turned 3 and he got his first haircut. Well, is that a tradition or is that rabbinic or is that
tradition? And I'll tell you what it's about. At 3 years old, the child's mind starts opening. He's starting to talk. He's starting to do school. So we make a big deal about it. He's graduated from babyhood into young manhood. So we cut his hair, we give him tzitzis, we take him to yeshiva, and they put honey or sugar on the olive base so that the Torah is sweet. And now you're going to say Shema with your zaidi and all that. It's a tradition because what we're saying, we do this every time. When you move up a level, you get a big deal. So you move up to 3 years old, it's a big deal. You get to the bar mitzvah. Nowhere does it say you have to make a bar mitzvah suda. The only time it mentions a suda is by circumcision at 8 days old. If you don't make a suda, they said today I was bar mitzvah. That's nonsense. You know when you were bar mitzvah? At Baruch, when you turned 13 and you went to shul at Ma'ariv and you said Baruch Hashem bang. That's it. No aliyah, no nothing. You don't have to do anything to become bar mitzvah. Bar mitzvah, what means? A son of mitzvahs. When does that happen? When you turn 13. Really, it happens biblically when you have 2 pubic hairs. We say at 13, a boy goes to it. In other words, when you start becoming a teenager, bang, done. That's it. So, nonetheless, what do we do at a bar mitzvah? Traditionally, we make a big deal about it. Now, we, Ashkenazim, we do not put on, half Ashkenazim. We don't put on. Yeah, no, but you stick your food like.
You're on the golf course from Lakewood yesterday. Shelly and Reggie. I can't have rice. I can't have this. My son's coming from this.
I'm so confused right now. She doesn't know.
Talk to me.
Okay, so
and I said that on that's recorded what I did. I take it all back.
He takes it over. That's bad. It's a scrubbing. So here's the thing. But we get bar mitzvah to make a big deal because now you're stepping up and play. You're no longer 3. You were from 3 to 13. You were preparing. Now you're a big guy. When do we put on a talus? When you get married.
Oh, that's right.
Same thing. The truth is, you should put on when you're 13, like the Yankees or the Svadim. But we don't do it because we say as long as you're under your parents' home, they have control of your eyes and your heart. Now you're going into your own rishus. Now you can need the protection of the talus. It's a sukkah stuff. Beautiful part. Anyways, let's keep going because we're doing great. So that's the idea. It's a beautiful thing to talk about the next time, what it means. So, all those where the Rabbanan said it's allowed to cut you here on Chalamayit. Now we're getting to the topic of our parak. You're allowed to cut you here also during the days of mourning. Wherever they said you're allowed to by Chalamayit, in all those cases covered from the Medina Sayyam, or you came out of prison, etc. Then you could cut your hair even on morning. Wherever you're not allowed to cut your head on here on Chalamayit, okay, now we're on Amid Bays. Yud Dalet Amid Bays. But if you say that an infant has the distinction between his being born before Chalamayit and during Chalamayit, it turns out that mourning is going to apply to the Kattan, because if he became an oval, unfortunately his mother died in childbirth, so that you can't cut his hair, it means that you're saying that essentially the little child has a din of mourning. But we learned we cut in minors, we rip the garments of we do Korea, we rise Korea, we rip the garment of a child only to accentuate the grief of the adults that look at this poor child, right? But not because the child himself needs the thing. So for an example, unfortunately, if a child's parent passes away, usually what they do the day after the funeral, they send the boy back to yeshiva. They send the kids back to yeshiva because let him get back to normal life, right? There's nothing gained by him hanging around. Amar Rav Ashi, Mi Katani Asurin, does the price actually say, but those who are prohibited to cut the hair are prohibited to cut the hair during the morning? No, it says Dilma Yesh Mehem Asur. Perhaps there are those who are prohibited to cutting the hair on Chalamayit and are likewise prohibited from cutting it during morning, like most people. The Yesh Mehem Mutter, that even though on Chalamayit you can't cut the hair, but during the during the morning period, you could. Okay? So
That's
says
very
the Gemara, Aim Ameima V'Iteber Rav Shisha B'Reider Rav Aidi Ma'asiach. Kattan Mutzer L'Galeicha B'Moyet. Okay, it's allowed, what a child is allowed to cut his hair during Chalamayit, Loishna Noila B'Moyet, Loishna Moila Meikara. No difference. No difference. If he was born during Chalamayit, yeah, that war's coming. That what he called, because he's boxing himself into a corner. What he called, and he knows Biden isn't going to do a damn thing. Like going to go, no difference if he's born by Mayid, no difference if he was born before Chalamayit. Amar Pinchas Abanan Amitanino. Where it says that you're allowed to cut your hair on Chalamayit, you're allowed to cut your hair during the Avelis. Where it's not, it's prohibited from cutting your hair in Chalamayit. It's forbidden to cut your hair during the days of mourning. If you say it's prohibited on Chalamayit to cut the hair of an infant born before Chalamayit, it will turn out that there is mourning that's happening by a Kattan, and that can't be like we learned before. Batanya, Machri and the Kattan, we rise clear, we rip his clothes, because of the grief, the grief of the elders, not because he himself has any avelos. It doesn't say Asurin Elo. Also the Yeshman Mutter. There are those that are also on Chalamayit and also on morning, but there are those that are prohibited in Chalamayit, but permitted for during morning. So now the Gemara says, in fact, There is no Avelos on a holiday itself. Shenema, because it says V'samachta b'chagecha, because you shall rejoice in your festival. First, we're going to learn this, and then we're going to explain this because this is very, very difficult. Shenema v'samachta b'chagecha, you shall rejoice in your festival. If there's a pre-existing mourning, meaning he was in mourning before Yom Tiv, we talked about this yesterday. The positive commandment that is on the entire community of having joy overrides the positive commandment of Avelis. Now, Avelis is not a positive commandment. It's only rabbinical. But so number one, that's not universally held. Number two, oinon, right? When the body is lying right in front of you, is biblical. Should that happen? Nonetheless, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It overrides. You're not allowed to have Avelis when it's Yom Tov. Avelis. But on 14b2, the hashtahu, even if the Avelis is now, in other words, the person passes away on Yom Tov, then certainly the positive commandment of the Yachid, of Aniyus and Avelos, the rabbinical and the biblical, certainly is not overrides the overarching theme of joy of the community. What is the big problem with this, boys and girls? Everybody go back to the previous page. There's no Avelos on Regel because V'samachta b'chagecha. What is V'samachta b'chagecha, Daddy? The Korban Simcha, the sacrificial chagiga. Remember, they slaughtered an animal, so there should be food on the table. Ain't Simcha ela b'basa v'yad. There's no joy except with meat, right? Meat, wine, and stuff. Who has that mitzvah? Only the men. It's a male mitzvah. Freak the mefarshin. How come the women don't have Avelis? How come they don't have mourning on Yom Tov? They do not have a mitzvah b'poyol. They don't have a mitzvah of shalem simcha. You hear that? For the women, this idea that the say of the rabbin, the positive commandment of the majority, overrides the commandment of the individual, does not apply to the women. The women don't have anything of simcha. All of a sudden, their husbands are misameich for them. So the Zunzain and he says, from here you have a raya that simcha b'poyol, physical simcha, is for the men. There's such a thing as simcha b'leiv, joy in the heart. That's not physical. It's not here. But there is an idea of simcha b'leiv. The women, of course, have a din of simcha b'leiv in the heart, and even though it's not obvious, that's enough to say they are part of the communal rule of simcha and not. Where does this come in? I spoke about this 30-something years ago at my Sheva Brachas, because there's a big machlokes between the Rambam and Tosfos. What is a panim chadashis? What is every Sheva Brachas has to have a new face. Somebody either who never had benefit from the meal of the chassan and kala, or that's Tosfos. The Rambam says no, he can have that. He never heard the blessings, the 7 blessings that we give. Obviously, the meal is simcha b'poyol. The blessings are simcha b'leiv. The meal is joy that's physical, and the blessings are a joy that comes from the heart. This is tied to this idea that there's such a thing as simcha b'leiv. It's very
you're supposed to be mesameach your wife with
said that.
A nice dress.
But Daddy, follow misamcha olav. The husband gives his wife new jewelry. The husband gives his wife new dresses. That's not the wife. The wife.
She's besimcha.
Right, but it's not besamachta b'chagecha, which is a shalmei simcha.
Right.
Is the carbon. She's
Right.
not in the carbon. So where is she? The answer is she's buried in that thing of the thing. That's where it comes in. Anyways, let's go further.
Yeah, one more thing. There's a din that if the Nossi, can you hear me?
Yes.
No, if the Nossi dies, then everybody, the whole klal has to be in mourning. So that's Avelus the Rabbim. Now, is Avelus the Rabbim doiche in from the
Very good question. So my father's questions are this: if the Gadol Adar passes away, everybody is supposed to be in mourning. The reason that is, Daddy, is because you're mourning the loss of Torah. You lose the Torah is lessened in the world.
right.
And this was a living Torah. So my father said, in that case, everybody's a mourner. So now you're matched up the joy to say of the Rabbim of Simcha against the say of the Rabbim of mourning. The answer to me would be, and again, it's a great question, I'm not sure of the answer, that mourning is an individual thing that applies to each person. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
In other words, even everybody is supposed
Meaning
to be
each yochid has to be
in himself.
each one. Okay.
That is different. That's a difference. That's a fundamental difference than the universal simcha that is now coming down that's applied across the board.
Across the board.
I think that's going to have to be the difference. The question is a great question. Let's go a little further. We're just going to go to line 15. We're going to get to the end of the Yom and we'll be up to date. Minuda, if somebody was excommunicated, Ma'u Shinoyin Nidu Regel, does he have to conduct himself with his ban on the festival? In other words, nobody's not allowed anybody to come within 4 amas of him. He doesn't take a haircut, he doesn't wear shoes, groom himself, a launderer, etc. Amar Rabbi Yosef Tashma Donat in the fascists. We try capital cases with dine makos and corporal punishment and the dine mominus on Chalamoid. Says the Gemara, the Elite Savadina, and if the defendant will not heed the decision of the court, Mishtamile, we put him into excommunication immediately, even on Chalamoid. So you see that Chalamoid has excommunication. Says the Gemara, and if it comes into your mind that we do not create a ban on Yontif, then so that one who was excommunicated before Yontif, the festival comes and supersedes the ban. But now they're on Chalamoid that we can excommunicate him. So Elamai, you see that it doesn't matter. We have to, even if there's a precondition, pre-existing ban, it remains in effect. Perhaps all it means is that they try the case, but they'll decide the case, the verdict will not be announced until after Yom Tov. Because if you don't say that, this capital case is it means that they'll have to execute the guilty defendant even on Chalamoid. But then in that case, the judges will then bring down the mitzvah of joy, of rejoicing on Yom Tov. Titania, because we learned that the Akiva Minayin the Sanhedrin. How do we know to the Sanhedrin? Shaharugu Sanefesh that executes someone. Shalom Tayamim Akalai Sayan. They're not going to taste food the entire day. Tamaloy Maloi Saichu Aladam. You shall not eat over the blood. So how could they do that on Chalamoid? That means they're not proffering simcha.
Why doesn't the defendant, the guy that's supposed to be executed, he should say, "Hey, wait a minute, it's you can't execute me. I'm not going to be happy."
You know why? Because when somebody is judged to be dead, he's dead already.
Dead.
Remember the halacha? He already has a din of a dead person.
Right.
Exactly.
That was the answer.
That's the answer. And that's
Right.
the answer. Otherwise, my father's question is, the guy who's supposed to be executed should have said, wait a minute, I can't be executed. Right? So Elamai, the halachas. So Ella lianuye bedino. We're talking about the judges are only allowed to study the case. 14b3, right? Hachanami over here too. Leonanim Bedina. They can only study the case, but they can't give the verdict. Amalei, Rabbi Yosef said, he writes and said in Cain, if that's true, Nimsa Ma'anes, you're delaying the party's justice, and that is forbidden. You're not allowed to push off. So what do you call it? You can't push off court cases. And once you have a court case, you have to finalize it and give the punishment immediately. Hello.
Not in America.
They come to the courtyard in the morning and study the case. And the judges eat and drink in the whole day. By Shkia, all the way after once the sun is setting, and then they finalize and they execute him. So they do everything in the last 10, 15 minutes of the day. So but you see, or excommunicated when the sages release him from the ban. So you see, you could do it. You can get rid of the ban even on Chalamari. You can get rid of the ban of it. Does the Mishnah say that the sages release him, which is a dead general statement? No. It's individual. It's a particular individual. That's because the excommunicated person came and groveled in front of the Bezdin and said, please, okay, I got the message. Please be kind to me. And so they were. Because he came to them, therefore they released him. Mitzayra, the case of course, I still have a problem. Because a menuda is chayav b'mitzvahs. In that case, the assay of the rabbim of Simcha should offset the assay of the yachid of Nidui, that you have to listen to the Rabbanon. So I was like, what's going on over here? So I want you to hold that question. The Gemara never answered that question, right? The Gemara never answered that question. We got to Nidui, but we're going to get to it in a minute. Mitzayra, in the case of a Mitzayra, Mao Shenagil Tzarasa Beregel. Does he go with the restrictions of the Tzaras on the Regel? Amar Abaya Tashma. A Nazir and a Mitzayra who became Tahar, who became pure, right? Be made to us. Meaning, if he's still contaminated, right, he still has to conduct himself, right? He has to conduct himself with the Tumah. See, even on Kalamai. No, it's the Gemara is saying, he means over here, it's not necessary to say that during his contamination, he does not conduct himself with the restrictions of Tzaras, because the joy of the Yontif, which is a communal, supersedes his personal Tzaras. Since he needs to go 14b3, and this is where we're stopping, what do you call it? And this is because he needs to bring his carbon, he needs to bring his sacrifices right after he finishes. He might go ahead and push it off. He'll be so happy that he's done with it. He'll take his family out on Chalamayit, and he won't bring the carbon until Shmini Atzeres. The problem with that is the carbon of a Mitzayra is a carbon yochid, a private carbon. And on Yom Tov and Shabbos, you can only bring communal Yom Tov things. Kamash Malam, that we don't say that. So therefore, we have no proof whether it supersedes the Tzaras. So Amarava Tashma Bahat Sarua, and the person with Tzaras, his garment shall be rent, and the hair on his head should be unshorn. The Rabba is Kohen Gadol, to teach us that even a Kohen Gadol has the laws of Tzaras. That means even though even though the status of a Kohen Gadol, the entire year is like everybody else just on Yom Tov with regard to mourning. A Kohen Gadol is not allowed to mourn. That means even if it's, heaven forbid, his mace is lying in front of him right now, he still has to do the avodah. He's not allowed to eat from the avodah, as we're about to see. It's not because it says Kohen Gadol Makri Bainon. A Kohen Gadol offers the sacrifices even when he's a Oina that's biblical speaking. Biblically an Oina. Because the dead person is lying in front of him. Then the Oichun doesn't have to eat it. That's something else. But he has to be a Oina. Shma Mino. No Yiktsarosi Beregel. The Pasuk comes to those that he still goes ahead and has to keep the restrictions of a tzaratz. Shema, no, we learned from here. Now we can understand what's going on by Nidui. The Torah over here makes a Gezeres HaKosuv from the pasuk itself that despite the fact that a Kohen Gadol is not in mourning the whole year, just like we are only on Rega, and here is the mitzvah of simcha, of joy on the regels. Still, he has to keep his saras even on the regel. That certainly somebody put into nidui, even though there's the public, the community simcha, joy. It doesn't override the rabbinic putting him into nidui the same way, because you can learn it. You can compare nidui to saras because they're very remarkably the same. Very good, everybody. We actually caught up. Amazing. And we did it in time.